Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. Hi. It was a journey getting here today. A couple of you have asked me what happened, and it was a bank heist. I said to Victor, who's one of our primary funders, we needed to find the money somewhere, dude. So I took it upon myself. No, I fell. I'm 69 years old, and I fell on a city sidewalk, and I broke my elbow. And I feel all the vulnerability and the, emotional ups and downs of it. And I thought, well, I might not go to the conference. And I said, Carolyn will kill me. So I'm here because I love Carolyn. And I love all of you guys too. And in terms of setting the stage, I think, Joe, you did a really good job. And I love your question about culture. And is it an enabler? Is it a hindrance? Is that basically what you're asking?
That's the hypothesis.
That's the hypothesis. So let's work on that. I like it a lot. And one of the things I'll say about any kind of, a lot of our villages are, they don't feel very multicultural. And a lot of our villages are predominantly white. And for, not necessarily wanting that to be true, we want to do things, we want to invite people of so many different backgrounds and cultures and experiences to join us. And we've had, kind of middling success with that. So I challenge all of us to take it up as maybe one of the most important things we do in our village development in the next several years. I know at San Francisco Village, where I'm the executive director, we've undertaken this culture change work about 4 years ago, and it has changed us. And it hasn't been necessarily all easy, but it's been deep and meaningful, and I'm really excited about where we're headed. So if you don't read your Village Moving California newsletter, you should. And there was one that came out in early September where Patrick Shandrick wrote an article about the changing demographics in our state. And it's a great article. There's so much good data there. And I just want to give you a couple of highlights from what Patrick wrote about. This is from the California Department of Aging. What they're telling us is that by 2030, nearly 11 million older adults will call California home, and that will represent about 25% of the population. By 2060, that number will be 30%. So we're headed up. There's an increasing diversity in that rapidly aging population. By 2060, Hispanic older adults are projected to make up to 40% of the state's population of older adults. That is quite significant, up from 25% in 2020. And the Asian community will represent 17% of older adults. And finally, what Patrick wrote is that growing linguistic diversity highlights the need for culturally sensitive care, which is a cornerstone of our village model. Villages are rooted in their local communities and their local cultures. I think of what I do professionally, I'm a culture builder. I'm an executive director, I'm a culture builder. I challenge you to think about that. What's that mean as you grow your village? Villages provide personalized, culturally appropriate support to people. We do this right now. We can expand, we can grow. And we have a community-based approach to aging services. So we're well positioned to be responsive to these cultural changes. And as my friend Eric Larson likes to reference all the time, it's all about relevance. It's all about relevance. We live in a rapidly changing social environment. And are we relevant? Because things can change on a dime. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce these lovely people that have gathered up here. And it's nice to see you again, Joe. I remember you from our conference in Oakland.
Yes.
Thanks for doing this. Joe Garbanzos is the state president at AARP California, part of a volunteer leadership team advancing AARP's social agenda and advocacy priorities in the state and nationally. He's also deputy director at Filipino Veterans Recognition Education Project, a national volunteer team supporting Filipino American veterans and their families. His body of work includes CEO, executive director, and chairman at Samahan Health Centers, consulting in healthcare to outreach and educate hard-to-reach, culturally diverse communities. He's a lecturer at the California School of Management and Leadership, Alliant International University. He's also had a career in the pharma biotech industry. You're just like a slouch.
That was my dark side.
The guy's a slug. I mean, what is it? Joe has an MBA at the Peter F. Drucker Business School. He has a postgraduate degree in public health from the School of Community and Global Health at Claremont Graduate University. He completed the UCLA Anderson Business School Johnson & Johnson Healthcare Executive Program in 2019. You are a highly qualified dude. And we're really glad you're here. Now I get to introduce the panelists, my friend Carlene Davis on the end there. Hey, Carlene. Carlene and I won't go into that. I'll introduce you. Okay. I have stories to tell. Carlene Davis is co-founder of Sistahs, Aging with Grace and Elegance, also referred to as SAGE Sistahs, a volunteer grassroots support network focused on improving long-term health and wellness outcomes for African American women and elders. Ms. Davis also serves as Director of Strategy and Evaluation for California Black Women's Health. Additionally, she's the principal of Strategy Muse Coaching and Consulting, where she partners with mission-driven organizations to support their growth and success. She received a BA in Political Science from the University of California at Berkeley, an MPA from the LBG School of Public Affairs, University of Texas at Austin, and she's a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Culture of Health Leaders Fellow. She's also on the board of directors of Village Movement California and has worked with San Francisco Village on some of our culture change initiatives. Thank you for being here, Carlene. Next is Fumi Liang. Fumi is the co-founder and board president of Care Connections Network Village in Huntington Beach. Fumi, Carolyn's home village. Fumi was born and raised in Japan and attended college in Taipei. She is fluent in Japanese, Chinese, and English. Fumi has always had a strong desire to serve her community and has volunteered countless hours to the congregation Lutheran Church of the Resurrection, currently serving as its cultural ministry coordinator. Her passion for senior care led her to co-found Care Connections Network Village, and her work enables her to fulfill her dream of empowering older adults to continue to live in their own homes comfortably and independently for as long as possible. Thank you for being here, Fumi, and thank you for your long-term service to the village. It's not a sprint, is it? It's a marathon.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And finally, William Sandoval. Hi.
Hi.
We haven't met yet. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
William Sandoval began his career in local government in 1990 when he was hired as a recreation leader for the city of Bell Gardens. He brings with him an extensive background in budget administration, community outreach, facilities management, public policy, project management, adult and senior program development, and special event planning and parks programming. He has collaborated with nonprofits, community-based organizations, and other agencies to deliver activities and programs. Bill holds a bachelor's degree in public administration and a master's in business administration from the University of Laverne, and an associate's in gerontology. He believes that aging is not lost youth, rather a new stage of opportunity and strength. Thank you for being here, William.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Back to you. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, thank you. That was a very generous introduction. I am privileged to join the panelists here. We're fortunate to have a group of panelists that will provide different perspectives on the topic of culturally affirming care in our diverse communities. So we'll have some structure as far as our panel discussion, but not too much, right? So we'll have a conversation as opposed to a structured, very structured.
Can I take
session.
their picture from here? Because they are looking at us, but then we want to take a picture.
Oh, great idea. Right, a reverse selfie.
Hi,
Yeah,
we want to
Awesome.
recruit these people
Awesome.
here.
Bright idea.
Thank you.
So that's one takeaway you can get from this panel. If there's nothing at all, when you do a panel, you should take a selfie of your audience as opposed to yourself. But in any event, the structure will be around 3 general questions. We're going to build on those questions based on the conversation that we have here. And for the first question, I'm going to start to my extreme left. We start with the ladies first, right? So the question is about stereotyping. From your experience, can you share, maybe implicit, sometimes explicit stereotyping that can be a challenge when it comes to growing a village movement, or a team for that matter? It doesn't have to be specifically a village movement community. Let's start there.
Okay, so Kate knows I tell stories, and this isn't related to a village specifically, but it's an experience that I had. I'm on a committee, and we were planning for speakers to come and speak to the committee. And one of the issues was around Alzheimer's. And so I mentioned to the committee member that, yes, this is an issue that's very important. It really impacts my community. And, I have a speaker who is an excellent speaker. And to which she responds, well, you want to make sure that it's a speaker that'll be relevant to everybody. So, a couple of things. I'm not sure she thinks about that with all the white speakers that we have. Also, there was somehow an assumption that she and my fellow colleagues would not have anything to learn from an expert who was she's 5 degrees behind her name and is an expert in her field. So I tell that story because that's her stereotype, and it was very off-putting. It changed the nature of my relationship because it told me something. It told me a lot. And so, we have a professional relationship, and we might have had a more expansive relationship. And so I lift that up to have folks think about where your blind spots might be. She's a wonderful person. It's not, but that was a blind spot, and that blind spot had an impact. And so as we think about the villages and the village movement, and even when we're acting in earnest and with sincerity, there might be some blind spots. And so it's really a matter of staying in curiosity, to think about when I'm reaching out to other communities, what might my blind spot be? So it's not it's not a stereotype about who Black women are, because we're wonderful. But it's just to recognize that those blind spots could have a significant impact.
That's an excellent staging answer to build on, right? And as an aside, I was born in the Philippines, and living in San Diego, people would always approach me, so which Navy service did you serve, right? Filipinos are known to be Navy here in San Diego, or if you're female, I suppose. Are there any Filipinas here? Are you a nurse? Filipinas are nurses. So stereotyping is like ubiquitous. You don't even recognize it. So the question to you is, how do you disarm that? And how do you use that as an opportunity, to borrow your term, to be curious and to expand knowledge?
Me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, so our village, Care Connections Network, the first we thought that we have the few Japanese members. And then to talk about the stereotype, and then we're all thinking about, okay, so what about invite them to a monthly seminar, which is in English? And then how we're gonna do about food, and then about how they're shy, and then how they invite them, and then how to do this, and then think about the stereotype, and as Asian people, most of the time, it's like, okay, they probably don't want to come to the party, and then maybe they, what they want to do, and then how we can invite them, and then part of our village. But then I think about the stereotype, and then I think about myself, and I was born in Japan and grown up there, and then came to United States, and I realized that's how they look at me. It's like, I'm shy, I don't want to go, and then because I'm Asian, so I'm good at numbers, which I'm not. And those are the stereotypes, you know, and then I failed my math. And then they didn't know. They would look at me and say, okay, she can be accountant. She can be, you know, doing this math. But they're not. So I thought, okay, so we cannot think about those. Every person is different. And then so I approached individually and then get to know them. And then some really, they're really interested in showing their talent. So we started like a cultural thing. It's like invite old members to do Japanese brush painting. They loved it. And then those members, Japanese members, like think that, okay, this is great. I can show them my culture and then let them realize that we can do this to enjoy with English speaking. I mean, like it's really difficult to translate those, you know, how to brush painting and then, or even cooking. And then sometimes like, okay, these how to make the egg rolls. Maybe they can make the egg rolls looks like burrito, but that's okay, right? That's okay, totally okay, because we're doing this together and learning each other. So that's how we started. It's like, okay, we're gonna do some Japanese members to teach this, and then we can have some Japanese seminar, and then we can invite, we actually from San Diego, we have a great Japanese instructor for adults, older adults exercise, so fall prevention, which probably, Kate, you really needed to attend. and so that is Japanese, but you know, moving, you can copy, you can do it together. It's a bilingual. And then so all the English speaking members attended. And then eventually, they become friends, and then they are communicating each other. And I think it just happens very naturally if you really intensively build the relationship each individual. That's did I answer your question?
That's awesome, right?
Yeah.
How you can expand and use the opportunity that you encounter with stereotyping to enhance more curiosity, to get more learnings in the process. And stereotyping is not only physical, right? Stereotyping can be where you're coming from, your discipline. So a question to you, you represent city services. What kind of mindsets, if you will, exist in certain organizations that lend itself to stereotyping different groups?
So before I begin, I agree with everything that you guys have said. It's about identifying the gaps that organizations have. And it's really taking a seat back and taking a look and seeing, okay, where are we at now? Where do we want to get there? How do we want to get there? And if it's about reaching a different demographic culturally, what are we not doing to get there? So it's a question that as organizations, you have to identify those gaps. For example, come and I'm working at the senior center now, and it's predominantly white. So my first thing there is, okay, so we're missing a segment of the population, a Latino population, Asian population. So what can I do to begin that process? How can I have them be more engaged in what we do? How can I have them be welcome and start understanding that this is for them as well? And so one of the things that I've done is to be able to identify those gaps that we're missing. But more importantly, how do I get from point A to point B? Once you identify it, that's great, but how are you now going to implement that to be able to have them start coming in? Have them start buying in into what you are presenting. And one of the things that I've done is to create a lot of collaboration with different organizations. And that's to the point where I invite organizations, or I even go and I look at them and I invite myself. Why? Because I want to be able to have them know who I am, who I represent, and the reason that I'm there. And looking at the villages, one of the things that has always happened has been where a lot of municipalities think, well, that's a total competition within what we represent and what they're trying to do. So no thank you. Where I'm about, no, yes. This is additional information and resources to the same community that we represent, so why not? And it's about creating that collaboration between the organizations, but most importantly, the community. Because if the community does not know, especially the Latino community, does not know exactly what it means to be a part of the movement of the villages, they're not going to even give you the time, okay? So that also means that you have to know who your culture is. You can't just all of a sudden say, I'm gonna talk about the village, I'm gonna talk about the senior center, and the hope is that, no, you gotta go beyond that. You gotta understand what the culture is. You gotta understand what it is to be talking to abuela, grandma, grandpa. And you gotta go deep down on that in order for you to be successful at that, because they would know whether you are selling something to them or you're being genuine about what you're trying to do and why it's important to them. So it goes down even deeper. And when you engage that with them, and when you start having them be a part of something that they understand, it begins to open up their eyes. Because remember, the Latino community, when I say we take care of our own. Mom, dad, they all live with us. They all live with us. Grandma, grandpa, they all live with us. But as we turn and we have a new influx, a new generation, it doesn't mean that we can't look for an option that can be offered to our culture, okay? Now, who are you going to target when you talk about the village movement? Are you going to target grandma and grandpa? Or are you going to target the son, the daughter? What's the answer to that? Well, the answer is you're going to target the daughter and the son, not grandma and grandpa. Because you're going to have to convince them that their parents are going to be safe and they're going to understand what this is. So that's who, as a village movement, you need to start targeting. Not grandma and grandpa, you're going to start targeting the families that they live with, because they are the ones who at a certain point in time will make the decision for them. So it's all about, again, going back, identifying those gaps. It's all about engagement, but more importantly, know the product, know who you're talking with, know who your target audience is, because if you don't, they will turn away. Get yourself involved in a lot of organizations that have events, such as city events. We got quite a bit of Latino communities. That is the best way to get the word out of the villages. They might not know right away, but you're dropping that seed there. Get yourself involved in collaboratives with different cities. Engage yourself in that, because that's what's going to get the word out there. And eventually, you will be part of collaboratives that are predominantly Latino, Asian, whatever the case, and you'll be able to provide that information. But again, always remember, you've got to understand the culture. If you don't, then it will be very hard for them to really understand what you're trying to do.
Terrific.
I'm sorry, I talked long. I love talking, so.
No worries, yeah. Terrific insights as far as the Latino community. It's very family-centered, you know, so his point about we take care of our own is probably more significant in that community. I'll share an example of what here in San Diego is doing to collaborate across organizations while you set up for an example of collaboration across ethnic groups, right? So here in San Diego, I see someone from the county here. I'm gonna give you a shout out. The county organizes a round table, and I think, is it every, 6 weeks or every 2 months? They put together members of different organizations who are participating in the implementation of the livable community concept. And the concept focuses on 8 domains. So each domain has a group that's working to advance that domain in the communities. So they meet regularly and share best practices. So at that level, there's communication going on. What you shared was communication on the ground, which is very important. But there's a kind of a wholesale game to this, as well as a retail game to this. So back to you. The question is inter-ethnic collaboration. Can you share some examples in your experience you were able to achieve that?
Okay, now, first, because fortunately I can speak Japanese. The language is really, really important. So if you look around, each village is different. Happens to be our village. We have, our church has Japanese ministry. So I kind of approached to them first, it's like what they need. And then also, Japanese culture, older adults, lots of them, they live by themselves. And then also, they don't want to bother their children. I don't know why. I don't mind bothering my kids, but most of them said I know, and they said, well, I don't, my kids are so busy, and then they live in another state, and then I really want to be independent. And then I said, that's good, being independent is really important. And I said, what do you need? I said, well, I want to make sure that I still live by myself safely, and then I don't want to be alone. And then so I started to talk to Japanese choir group, and then also I started to talk to, of course, Japanese ministry group and choir group. And then during the COVID, that times that they locked in their house and then they couldn't go out, I started to create Japanese network for them. And then all the regulations and what not to do, all the information, English information, important information about COVID, I translated in Japanese and I sent out the mass email to those network. And in that network, how did I create that network? That was back in 2019. We are partnered with Hoag Hospital, and then the Hoag Hospital is created this program through Alzheimer Family Center called Mind Booster. And then the Mind Booster is like a seminar for 4 days. 4 days, Carolyn, what's the 4 days?
Mm-hmm.
4 days seminar, and it was like one seminar is talking about the nutrition, then the one seminar talking about Alzheimer and then dementia, the one talking about the mental health and talking about that physical. And then so it's all different, but then they're all in English. And then they're very important seminar. So I decided, and actually Carolyn was that time the executive secretary and executive director in the Care Connections Network. And then we decided, okay, let's do this in Japanese. And then when we decided, and then I tried to communicate with Japanese magazine and Japanese Orange County, Japanese American Association, all the group that I know that focus on Japanese community. And then they said to me, how can you find the speakers in Japanese who can speak in Japanese? And then that's like started. And then I researched, I tried, and then find all the speaker expert and then speaker in Japanese. And then we found one in Alzheimer, and then the doctor who can speak in Japanese and explain really well, and the physical instructor in Japanese, and we did mental health too. And then we created the Mind Booster, first one in the United States in Japanese. And then the whole hospital and Alzheimer Family Center, they were just amazed. And then they were thinking about probably 3 or 5 people will come. Guess what? 75 Japanese in Orange County signed up, and they all came every seminar for 4 weeks. And then so they became friends, and then I created Japanese network that way. And then so if I could speak Spanish, I would do that in Spanish. If I speak Tagalog, I'll do it in Tagalog. And it's just like how you can really looking around your village and then what kind of the popularity is like a small but in different language, and then they're looking for some kind of connection to this society, and then to learn how to live this society safety and then independently, and then then you what to research and then how to do, and then like Bill said, down to the ground and then even deeper to find out what you can do to start. And once you start, I know you will gradually find a way, and then definitely that's how you blossom the relationship with those groups that need it. So that's how we started. And then I still keep that network. And through that network, they found out what is village to village movement, and then what is Care Connections Network, and they all started to call, and then they said, well, I don't speak that much English, but can I join this village? And I said, of course. And then so we are having almost every other month Japanese seminar, and then also the Mahjong group, there's a Japanese Mahjong group, and then also that we have high school students come in English, they'll come and teach those devices and then iPhones and iPad. And then all Japanese group comes, and then they come and learn from those students because they are patient. They don't care you don't speak English, but they're patient. As long as they feel like they're needed and they can teach something. So that's how we're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So my takeaways are, build it and potentially they will come. And they will come because of language. They will come because of program-specific designs that cater to their needs. They will come if there's an appeal like an intergenerational opportunity to learn, right? So I think these are gems that not easy thing to do, but intentionally it gives you some roadmap as to what potentially you can do to elevate the level of cross-pollination among cultures, right?
I forgot language and food too.
Food, very important.
Very important.
So terrific. So to you, and I think this is in your jurisdiction, you're part of the board, right? Yeah. So terrific. It requires leadership. It requires an intentional decision to do something. This thing doesn't happen casually. Although you have a lady here who seems to be taking on with their own initiative and producing terrific outcomes. But in order to be sustainable, you need effective leadership. So share with us, what would be your advice, insight, when it comes to creating a culture within leadership that speaks of cultural inclusion?
Let me just, first, curiosity. Raise your hand if you live in a community where at least 15% of the population is African American.
15%?
15%.
Oh, we're close.
Few. You're
I live
no,
where I
Barbara.
live.
No, Barbara.
Oh, Barbara.
California, but yes.
Me, yeah.
And I lift that up because when it comes to African American community, there's a particular context here, right? African Americans only represent 6% of the state's population. And probably most villages in California are located in communities where there are not very many African Americans. And so then you have to think about, what do you do when there's just that one African American family in your community? And what's the type of leadership for that one to bring in? So like if someone came in the room today, if an African American came in the room today to possibly think that the village might be a place for me or them, it would not be an automatic assumption. Part of the leadership is realizing that it is intentional. It is a long game. You will need to, this is particularly related to the African American community because we don't have language as a lever, right? So building relationships and partnerships with individuals and organizations who can be your trusted messengers is absolutely critical. And sometimes you might have to think about not how do we bring the community in, but how do we go to community? Particularly as it relates to the African American community, it will need to be, it'll need to go both directions. It just saying, come, we're nice, we're wonderful people, is a good start, but it can be kind of intimidating. We have a particular history in the United States. And so the leadership for me is saying, how do I go out? That's going to, from my vantage point, that's what's going to be very important. And it's a long game. It will take a while to build the trust. There is not an assumption of trust. And that's okay. Like, just keep on. So that's what I'm saying, just keep on. Keep on, because there is value in it. And we have another question later, so I didn't want to talk about that, Kate, yet until it comes time to talk to that question. So that's the leadership is an intentional, it's a long game, and you'll need to go out into the community.
Great answer. Terrific. How are we doing on time?
I think we're good.
We're good?
Yeah.
So we're gonna open this up. And feel free to address the questions or question that you're anticipating, because I might not be reading that question.
Okay, Jeremy, okay. So I do want to talk about a collaboration that through my hat as a board member, my hat as co-founder of Sistahs with Grace and Elegance, and it was a partnership with San Francisco Village. So there was an opportunity to do some work from Scan Health Plan and around cross-cultural engagement. And I was like, Kate, there's this opportunity, around cross-cultural engagement. And Kate had met a colleague who was leading a senior center in the Lakeview, OMI area of San Francisco, a historically Black community that's rapidly becoming much more diversified. And so we came together like, this thing is due in 7 days. We got on the phone and said, can we do something together? Can we do something together to bring these two communities together? And we did, and it was connecting across communities. And so on a monthly basis, and this is the difference, Kate brought her members from San Francisco into the Lakeview OMI area. And we had these monthly convenings that had food and culture and, and talked openly around stereotypes around aging and stigma around aging. And so these two communities were able to build relationships with each other. And so the first step for San Francisco Village was not necessarily like, how do I get folks into my village? It was like, how do I build relationship and community first? And from building relationship and community, then there are now members from IT Bookman who are also now members of San Francisco Village. And so that relationship building before equipment, and really being intentional on finding commonality around our humanity while recognizing how race and class impacts that human experience. And so even though the project is over, that relationship's developed, the two groups are continuing to meet, finding opportunities to share and do different things together. And so that is an example. You want to add anything to that, Kate?
The one thing I just want to say, Carlene, in our initial planning to do this, it became really clear that what we needed to do was to center Black culture. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't about us white people, wanting to come over to your neighborhood and, or having you invite you over to our center or anything like that. It was an act of humility on our part to say, teach us, show us, welcome us in, but we're going to center your culture. And it was with your guidance that was really very successful, culminating in a Kwanzaa celebration last December, which was so meaningful for so many people, including the Black elders, who themselves had not celebrated Kwanzaa, and were learning about the principles of Kwanzaa. Turns out the principles of Kwanzaa and the principles of a village are very similar.
Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, there were some principles of eldership that came out of that experience.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
So thank you for sharing this example. Now, Kate, I understand when you said during the introduction that you're a culture builder.
That's right.
That is a terrific example of building a culture, to advance everyone. So we'll open this up to Q&A while you're thinking, while we're waiting for the questions from, if there's any, from the group. Think about, last words, if you will, as far as the panel is concerned. What do you want the group to take away from this discussion? Questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm Mary Howe from Village Santa Cruz County. And yes, our Black population is very small. But my question and hesitation is always to go in and say, teach me, show me. Is that kind of annoying to people? Like, I don't want to have to take my time to, I'm thinking of someone from a different culture. I don't want to take my time to have to teach you. Why don't you go out and learn yourself? So could you, and help me with that? That feeling?
Okay, so your question is, if you go to the person who has other culture and then teach me and then show me, and then is that going to be intimidated, or it's going to be? I don't think so. My experience, all of the Japanese members, or even the Chinese and Korean, and they would love to show off. They would love to share, and they're almost like waiting for you to come and ask. Because they're not gonna come, and they were thinking the opposite way, like if I go and I said, may I teach you, and then that's gonna intimidate that person. But then they are really waiting, and then come and say, show me how to cook this, or show me how to do this. And then, like that really made them feel like very happy, and then really feeling of being welcome to share their culture. So I encourage you to do that. That's the one step to build the relationship.
Good question.
Yeah, and if I may add also, it is also an opportunity for the other side to be really, to get to know you as well. Gee, they want to know about our culture. Sure, we'll let you know whatever. We love, as the Latino community, we love that. We want to talk about our culture. However, we wouldn't do it if no one comes and knocking or asking, because we just feel that, well, maybe, we are infringing on them. So, but we love that, and it does build those trusting relationships later on, which can develop into those collaboratives that we were talking about. Really quick, in learning about the villages, I really didn't know anything about it. So one day I sat down and I asked Carolyn, tell me about the villages. And she explained everything, and I was like, okay, I understand it now. And it has the same vision that I'm looking at as far as changing the way that we do things at our senior center. And it was an idea of merging those two things together and really coming up kind of like the same mission and vision that we are looking at. And that's really exciting. And how do we get there, and developing these collaborations with different organizations. At a different city that I worked at, I started a collaborative because I really wanted to know who's out there as a business, who's out there as a nonprofit. I just want to get to know everyone. Let's meet. Here's who I am. And that collaborative began with two people, myself and the director of the library that was there. So every time we met, we told ourselves, invite two more people. And invite two more people from a different organization, so we can share resources that we can have for the community. We serve the same community, why not? It's not competition, it's collaboration. So that grew out of 2 to about 60 members of the collaboration that we had. What also happened with that is that we created an engagement team with the community. We brought them along to be a part of that, and it was much more as an outreach to them to tell us, what are we missing in our community? Is there something that you're going to the next city down that you're using services over there that we are not providing here? What is it? Tell us what it is, and hopefully we can find some way to work that. So a lot of what was missing there was a lot of human services programs, social services, and the Latino community are, they're not going to want to do those type of programs, especially if you have like I did, I had a predominantly Latino father who was like, well, I don't go to counseling. There's nothing wrong with me. So it's got, yeah, and it's breaking that stigma. So what we did as a collaborative, we looked at that, and we had organizations that definitely provided those services, but not in the neighborhood that we were in. They provided them, let's say, in Santa Ana, and let's say we were maybe about 30 miles away from where we were actually at for that city. So a lot of that is, they're not gonna be able to go over there. So what did we do? Well, out of that, and working with all these collaborations, we looked at grants that were available, and we were able to apply for a grant. Now, as a city, we weren't able to do the lead company to do that, because it's mostly for 501c3s, nonprofits. But because we were very fortunate that we had that in our collaborative, we were able to apply under the umbrella on that, and we were able to attain $1.25 million for 5 years to bring human services programs to that neighborhood. Everything from counseling, everything from all the other services that a lot of our community was not tapping into and were afraid to. in their own language. So collaboratives do work. It just takes some time. It takes patience. It does take outreach in there, because it also is the bridge to, if someone is talking about, I'm looking for some specific program, I'm not sure, but this is what I'm looking at, and it sounds like the village is exactly what they're talking about. Well, if we are a part of that collaborative, that's my chance to say, I got the perfect village for you. This is what it is. Let me connect you to Carolyn Ross. She is going to give you some information on that. And mind you, you are gonna love what they say. And that's what it is about collaboration, because then we can bridge that with them and connect them to you. Then you can connect them to someone else that may provide a service that you guys don't. And it just kind of goes that way. Why? Because we represent the same community. Why not do the same thing and take care of them? This is what we do as well. So at the end of the day, I've done a lot of collaborations. They work. You just have to be patient. Yes, you have to put your time into that. Yes, you have to go out there and outreach with the different organizations, but you also have to include the community, the neighborhoods, and you have to include them in engaging. One of the things that we also did there is we developed a leadership program through engagement for our communities, where we were now able to provide them not only information about what is out there as far as services, but we also started having them be participants of commissions. One of them even went to become a city council member. And through the engagement and through the collaboration that we had, they would have never done that. And so it's much more, but in getting the work for villages out there, it does begin with a collaboration. Start looking at different organizations where you're at. If they have an organization that already has a collaborative, become a member of that. It's easy, it's free. You go to a monthly meeting, you get an opportunity to talk about the villages, pass out flyers, here's my information, and trust me, eventually someone from a different organization, even a city, will call and say, hey, I have someone who is asking about that. Can I go ahead and connect them with you? It works. You just have to be patient. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Very good examples, and these are take-home examples that you can apply. My takeaway is it's a personal relationship that you can build upon to achieve scale. Organizations, AARP included, we're always looking for opportunities to scale. But scaling can be micro as opposed to mega scale. So relationship counts. It's that one-on-one that usually take you to a ladder higher and higher to get that scale that you're looking for. So one step at a time. How are we doing on time? Question? Yes, sir.
So, as someone who's tried to bridge to agricultural locuses in my community and failed miserably, I think it's important to get back on the horse again and not give it up. I was given a grant to do a lecture series at La Luz, which is the Latino Community Center in our community. And we worked really hard on it, and no one came. And so I was standing there in an empty room with, a qualified Spanish speaker, and it was going to be this wonderful thing. And literally no one came. And so then I had to go back to the foundation that gave me the money, and I had to tell them what happened and justify what I had done, and so there I stood anticipating that, and I thought I have to just be honest and say this was, this is the first attempt, and so I put it out there and I said, here's what I'd like to do, and here's the second plan. And they were so excited and so supportive. They didn't ask for the money back. They didn't, right? Which I anticipated that they were going to say, no, give us the money back. But they didn't. They actually said, tell us more, and let's look at funding the next project next year. We're so happy that you aren't throwing in the towel. They weren't judgmental. They were supportive because we were trying. and nobody else seems to be trying to create these bridges. And so, while I was mortified and felt really, it was really challenging for me personally. It was a great learning experience, and everyone else took it that way and supported the learning for all of us. So I think that this is important for us to really, we're learning and we are the leaders of a cultural movement here. And I think we're going to fail a lot of times, but something will stick to the wall. And I want to say that in our community, the life expectancy in the Latino community is higher than the life expectancy in the Anglo community. And so we're starting to ask those questions. So why is it so different? It's a marked difference. And we're beginning to edify the lifestyle and the approach to aging that's happening in that community, and how can we adopt some of those principles in this community to improve the quality of life and extend the length of life in the Anglo community. And that edification has gone a long way.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Matt, to your point, Eric, so the theory of change that we have at Sistahs Asian Embracing Elegance is that we must return to our ancestral tradition of viewing aging as a collective rites of passage and not an individual test of mettle, M-E-T-T-L-E. And so that could have something to do, like, you know, for us, community is our safety net, because the systems were not designed for us, and some were designed against us. So community is the antidote for us.
Well said.
And let me also add, one of the things that I'm doing now, the senior center where I'm at, is we also have to identify what's coming up. Okay, so we have baby boomers, we have Generation X. And so in the way that we engage with that generation is much more different than we've engaged with other generations. So we continually have to, as professionals, really be out there outreaching and really talking to the community, because we need to understand our language as well. And you need to be able to take a look at that and learn from that as well, because if you're not willing to change a little in the way that we look at things or we market things, we're gonna lose out on that. They're gonna end up going somewhere else. So it's also a part of that, of knowing where you are at, what your target audience is, what's your target audience in the next 5 to 6 years. And really understanding where that's coming from, and really taking this idea, and we'll say the villages, and saying, okay, so we were able to reach out this segment of the population in these areas, and we created this awesome villages. That's awesome, that's great. What do we have coming up now? What's the new generation? And are we going to market to this new generation such as that? Coming from the senior center side of it, well, we can't. We won't, because the way that we market for an older generation is not the same that we're going to market for the Generation X. For example, I'm Generation X, and if there's any Generation X individuals here, the notion on that is, do you feel yourself that you're a senior? A lot of us, and I'll be the first one to say, no, I don't.
That's usually the case, denial.
Always. So you have to be able to take a look at that, because at the end of the day, if you want to reach them, you have to be able to speak their language as well. You have to be able to understand, okay, if they're not going to be coming to my senior center because they don't feel that they are seniors, what can I do program-based, service-based, even marketing-based, to be able to have them understand that it is not just the senior center, it's much more than that. And so it's an opportunity to look at it as an overview. And it goes back to what I said earlier, identifying those gaps that you may have in your organization, in your village, in your business that you're running, and how are we going to meet that demand. For example, real quick, and I know I like to blab a lot, so years ago, Blockbuster Video. How many people remember Blockbuster Video? All right, so that was like the end thing. Everybody went in there. Blockbuster Video was the thing. And years ago, this little company was starting to develop this streaming service, but it wasn't going anywhere. After a while of them trying to do that, they decided, well, you know what, we're gonna give up on the streaming service. We're gonna approach Blockbuster Video and see if they wanna buy it from us so we can get out of the business. Blockbuster Video said, no, that's not gonna go anywhere. Blockbuster's the thing. Well, years later, it blew up and that was Netflix. And so what happened with Blockbuster? Well, they got stuck in status quo motion. They wanted to see the lay of the land of what's changing and what's happening. And once we start doing that, that's when we start losing the game. So we have to always continually be engaged in what's going on out there so we can be successful.
Terrific insight, takeaways, feedback from the group before we close the panel.
Yeah, any more questions?
Yeah,
Oh,
there's
hold on.
a hand in the middle of the room.
Hello,
Hello.
Carlene.
Yes.
This is for you and anybody else on the panel in terms of suggestions for how do you respond when someone makes a remark like that your fellow professional made to you, or someone saying something to me about how do you pick out a good watermelon when I was in the grocery store. So it's based on assumptions. And so how do we, when we're trying to build a bridge, coalition or whatever, how do you respond without, just becoming enraged?
Right, yeah. So it's always a calculation, right? And so sometimes I'm tired. Like, I mean, it really, in that moment, I should say, I'm curious. I mean, I could have done that, but sometimes I'm too tired to do that. And so I think it's really a calculation on, kind of where you are in that moment, because we have to protect our energy as well. We've got battles fighting all over the place. And and if it's a situation where, it's really sitting with you, then it's okay to be brave. Like, you could say, well, and it could be that maybe you were just right there and they thought you might know, because I'm always asking, and how do I know, which one of these is the good nectarine? So it could have just been that, right? And so what I would say is just kind of think about, the nature of the relationship. So technically I should, since this is a colleague, I probably should be like, that was some ignorant shit. I probably, but that's not how I was feeling in the moment. And having this conversation, I may or may not, kind of come back to it. Because I do recognize that it has changed, and like I have now, like you are now in this category. You have a professional relationship, you don't have a personal relationship. And that's not necessarily good, right? Because I like to bridge both in the work that I do, because the work that I do is mission driven and it's about who I am as a person. And so it does, that can create a wall. So it's also to not let someone else's behavior kind of fundamentally change your values. So I may.
As a professional advice. The non-professional advice is take a deep breath.
Okay.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Before you react. Because usually it's not a binary response,
Yeah.
fight or flight. There are other responses.
Can I add
Yeah.
to that? Okay, so you talking about that, somebody come to ask you about how to pick the good watermelon. That happened to me. And then at the one supermarket. And then I goes like, my mom told me to hit the thigh, that's the sounds. And then my husband said that hit the head, that's the sounds. And I said, let's figure out, you know? And then he started to hitting here, and then we started to hit all the watermelon. And then pretty soon, so many people come in and gather, and then hitting here and hitting there. But then we'll just laugh about it. And I was thinking about, you know, that's the whole community. I mean, I won't take it like personally. I'm just thinking about, okay, this person, believe me, I have that talent to do that. Why not I show it to them, and then maybe that is right. But then I told him that I just told by my mom and then my husband, so I won't guarantee. But then we can try it. So, you know, just don't be afraid, and then just, you know, take it as a compliment, and then just share it.
Perfect. I think that's
Question here.
a question, and then,
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think, Patrick, how much time do we have?
We have another 10 minutes.
Yeah,
Another
so
10.
we're
Yeah.
Perfect.
fast.
Good.
I just wanted to ask, you all represent incredible peoples from different cultures and races, and as many of us come from different places and different races, we're all mixed up. And so growing up in California, I'm Native American, Hispanic, Irish, and German. How do we learn to celebrate for those of us that have lost culture, and how do you help bring those people into culturally affirming places?
We have so many from Germany, and then all the, you know, the different ones. So we decided that we are going to do like a share the story time, and then we do have, oh, that was so much fun, and then that like how they came on the boat, a ship, and then they didn't know they landed on the United States, and then some parents put her in there and said, okay, go. And then all the some from Germany, and then talking about how they were really hiding Jew and a family. It's so many stories, and then we will all learn from the background, the different background. And then so we did this story writing hours, and then we had about that 2 weeks, and then so many came, and then, you know, writing their own background story and then talking about it, and then we ended up with like having a potluck and then having all the different dishes, and then it is so much fun, and then sharing your background and sharing your food and sharing how you've grown up, and that's probably the best part of building community too.
That's a great question as well, because I'm mostly Chicano, and there is a difference between Mexican and Chicano. And so growing up Chicano, I didn't know much of the culture, the Mexican culture. And not until I started working in a city, predominantly Hispanic, Santa Ana, that one day this staff member of mine was creating this altar, and I was like, okay, that's that, okay. And it was for Dia de los Muertos. Mind you, I had no idea what that was, because I grew up in a Chicano community, Chicano, you know, being raised up. And one of my staff members said, it's gave me the story, the background, and all of that. And it's about accepting and realizing that you don't know that, which is okay, but having the embrace to learn, and to learn from that, and to be able to say, okay, I'm understanding where my culture has come around. Maybe I wasn't raised like that, but I can understand it, I can embrace it, I can tie it to what I had before, and it becomes this beautiful thing. And it's all about being able to embrace it and not feel bad that you don't know that, because I went through that. I was like, gee, I feel kind of bad. I'm Latino and I don't know some of the Mexican culture, but through that and through always being able to be open-minded and learning things is what always helps. And for the question back there about the watermelon and all that, I got a quick story. I used to pull my hair all the time, as you can see, but I had to stop because it was going on, you know, everywhere. I moved into an affluent community years ago, and I was the only Hispanic on that block. And one day on a Saturday, I'm out there cutting my grass in the front. Okay? Now most of everyone hires someone to do it there. I'm gonna do this. Across the street was my neighbor, and I saw the neighbor looking at me, and I'm like, okay, whatever. Neighbor comes over and she says, oh, that's you cut the grass pretty good. I'm like, thank you very much, appreciate that. I'm like, all right, And then the person goes on to say, okay, how much would you charge me to cut my grass? And I'm like, excuse me? Yeah, how much would you charge me to cut my grass? I'm like, I live here. And she was like, you live here? I'm like, yes, this is my house, I'm cutting the grass, this is my grass. oh, okay. But do you think you can still cut my grass? And so I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I do it for my yard, but I don't. She goes, oh, okay, I'm so sorry. So she walked away. I was a little angry. I come into the house and my mom's there and she's like, what happened? In Spanish. Well, the lady thought that I cut grass and she wanted me to hire me so I can cut her grass. And my mom goes, what? What did you say? I said, no. Why? We're gonna pay $100. So the moral of the story is, yeah, you're always going to get stuff like that, but you just have to turn it into a positive, because if you don't, it's always going to be burning behind you and you'll never be able to get from point A to point B if you're always taking that step back.
Perfect. So thank you for sharing your experiences and perspectives, because I think it made the panel discussion very rich, and hopefully our audience were able to pick up some key takeaways. So we started with the hypothesis, right? And I think the hypothesis remains to be proven, right? And it could be both. My own perspective is it can be a problem if you don't understand other people's culture. It could be a learning experience. It's how you react to it, right? So there's optimism when it comes to the future. Hearing from you, hearing from the panel, there are bright spots when it comes to creating a movement that is village-centered, but at the same time multicultural. So good luck to you. Enjoy the rest of the day and a half session here, and Carolyn, I'll send us back to you. Thank you.